And I don't remember all the details, but I remember coming away and waking up thinking, ooh, that's a cool concept. What if you could enter a photo and interact with it? It's its own realm, its own world, the photo realm. And so the more I thought about it, what would you do? Maybe I go to Vegas. Maybe I go to Hawaii. Maybe I go somewhere where no one is, right? Or fast travel. So it's really time travel, but it's always in the past. We can take a photo right now, and it's when we look at it, it's seconds old.
This is the future.
Hello and welcome to the Alternate Futures podcast, where we chat with indie sci-fi creators about their work, the world, and anything in between, or beyond. I'm Edwin Rydberg, and today I'm here with Tony Bible. Tony's passion is writing science fiction and fantasy with an emotional punch. Raised with humble beginnings in Georgia, his early childhood limited travel. The only way to experience other places was with voracious reading and imagination. He draws inspiration from fantasy fiction genres, dreams, comics, the supernatural, and role-playing games. He applies his degree in world history to deliver relatable but unpredictable storytelling. Tony is never not writing, but breaks away to burn new recipes in the kitchen, neglect chores to obsess over football, and play with his dog. He's based in San Antonio, Texas, happily married, raising 2 children, and works in the financial industry. Hi, Tony. Thanks for joining me today.
Hey, Edwin. Glad to be here. It's an honor. Thank you.
So I got to start with the cooking and burning new. Hopefully that's not actually burning new recipes.
Not right now.
Okay.
So yeah, I can count the number of burn recipes on probably 4 hands if I had them.
Okay.
So I order in a lot.
Okay. So are you trying to learn to cook then?
It's one of those things where you see a photo like, man, that looks good. I can do that. And then you get into it and what's the recipe? And you're asking, Echo, how many ounces are in and then then there's smoke and the fire alarms get me out of the house. And then I'm ordering pizza.
That's a
So
frightening acceleration of events there.
yeah. And so what I originally saw on Instagram or, online, it just ends up being like a burnt piece of charcoal. At that point, I order in pizza and I obsess over football. So, and we should say, American football, right?
Of
I
course.
know football, right? The American or the soccer version. Not too into that. I can't run, and so I tend to stray away from any sports that I'm not good at. I can sprint and I can catch a football. I can't run for hours on end. Go ahead and shoot me if my life depends on kicking a ball into a net. I can't do it.
It does look like you may have played football at one time.
I did redneck football just down the road. Me and a couple guys from high school. I was a band nerd. I played trumpet and rather good with it. What got me into college, I had a music scholarship that got me in. It wasn't my grades. But all that aside, yeah, I used to play football and lift weights with all the dumb grunts out there. And yeah, I had odd circles. I was a band nerd. I got along with a lot of the athletes, wrestlers, football players, and the bright kid at school too. So I don't know. I was never popular, but I kind of fit in anywhere I went.
Yeah, sounds good. Fit in all the circles. So here they have multiple types of football, obviously. I mean, they've got international football, which you guys call soccer.
Mhm.
They got futsal, which is the indoor five-a-side, is what they call it over here.
Oh,
I understand that the Germans call American football hand egg or something like that.
I wouldn't know. I probably know more about rugby than I do. Rugby is the grandfather of football, so I really found a appreciation for that sport once I was at Manila in the Philippines, and they showed soccer all the time, and then I saw rugby, and oh my gosh, people would just smash each other in the mouth and things here that would cause a crowd to swoon and go, oh, it was just another Tuesday for them. Like, okay, just keep on smashing each other. I was like, I need to watch more of this.
Yeah, that's a violent game, it looks like to me as well. I don't understand the
Yeah,
rules of
I
it.
don't know how they don't have more equipment. They may have a skull cap and that's it. It makes me wonder if we have too much equipment in modern day American football.
Yeah, I think there are some people that think so, but being an American football fan in the South, you obviously have to have a team. If it's not going to get you in trouble with your any fans.
You got to I tread this carefully because in the SEC, the Southeastern Conference, oh my gosh, It's high stakes in Texas and it's big game everywhere else. In the SEC and in the Southeast, it is a religion. And so, loud and proud, go dogs. I love Georgia, love the University of Georgia. I got my history degree there, class of 97. And it starts early. My elementary school was the New Georgia Bulldogs. Across the county was the Hiram Hornets. Now, if you look at the state, interstate, the two big teams are the University of Georgia Bulldogs, and then you have Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets. And so I swear, like age probably 3 or 4 or 5, they start to like subconsciously embed red and black code or color themes so that you become geared towards liking Georgia. Or, if it's a Hornet close enough to the Yellow Jacket, it's one of those two if you're interstate. And if you're born in Georgia and somehow, are a weirdo and you go to Florida or Tennessee or that other state right next door that's beat us for 15 years, Alabama. Yeah, it's just a way of life, and I love it. Come football season, I've got a sign upstairs. My wife hates this. We put this marriage on hold for football season. There's probably a lot of truth to that. I've gotten into some trouble. Like, okay, everyone knows if Georgia's playing and it's televised, I'm not anywhere else except for in front of that TV cheering on my team and my alma mater.
So how does that set you up with, let's say, in the neighborhood and being in Texas?
I fit in. So Texans are friendly. They've welcomed me, and I enjoy living here. So last year I went up to Austin, and Georgia was playing Texas, and that was a huge game. That had a playoff type atmosphere. So loud at kickoffs, your ears were ringing, and they're very cordial. No fist fights. It was a game where there was a bad call, and someone threw a water bottle down the field, and all of a sudden there was an avalanche of debris and flying water balls going down. I told my wife, I said, sit down. We don't know. I don't know how this crowd's going to be in front of 100,000 plus, but we're definitely in the minority. We ended up winning that game. Go dogs. Ended up playing them again in the playoff. We beat them again. So we definitely made a mark. That was their first year coming into the SEC. I'm glad to have them. Texas is an internationally known state, and they've got a good football program. They had a halftime show that was Olympic caliber with drones and fireworks coming out of them. And it was an incredible experience to be there. And we had good seats down in the lower end zone. So I enjoy Texas. They love football, and they're probably just as passionate as we are in the Southeast. But being from the SEC, I'll tell you, there's no better conference. Welcome, Texas Longhorns, and look forward to seeing the playoffs again this year. Hopefully my team's there.
Yeah, it's interesting. In the US, you really do spectacle well, like you say, halftime shows and things like that. International football is incredibly popular in England and many other places around the world. But for some reason here, I mean, they get very passionate, there's fights all the time and stuff, but they don't do the big halftime shows as far as I'm aware. There's not that huge spectacle that you get within the US sports, which is really interesting.
The halftime is really for most, it's a potty break,
Yeah.
right? Or time to refill whatever beverage you're having. Me, I was in band. We were the entertainment. And so, it's kind of disheartening to see a whole bunch of people head for the stands unless they were like the parents, the musicians on the field. We were actually a really good band. Our claim to fame and one of my highlights of life was going to President Clinton's inauguration. I'm dating myself here, but we went there and bands from all across the nation were competing. And we're like, we're going to find out how good we really are. We had a sense of how good we were in the Southeast. Everywhere we went, we always placed in the top three. Smallest band in the biggest grouping. Went to the inauguration, and they had, see if I can get this right. They had three classifications. They had orchestral, they had parade, and they had field. We took number one in field. We took number one in parade. We took number two in orchestral, and the band that was number one in orchestral, they were good. But that was really rewarding to go up against the nation's best at such a young age, an impressionable age, at a significant national event and come away with number one, number two type trophies and awards. It sets pride. We were called the Pride of Paulding. Our mascot was the Patriot, and we had these unique hats. Most of them have like this weird cork thing with a plume. That wasn't us. We were the Patriots. We had the trifold hat. So think pirate, right? But red, white, and blue. Doesn't get much more Americana than that. But the phrase was, the pain is temporary, the pride's forever. the pride's still going. I take pride in what I do and how I work and how I write. And it's something you embody. In an impressionable age, you're trying to figure out who you are. And when you have, like, I think of our band director, Ron Davis, he's gone now, but that guy was a father figure when I didn't have one. And so band filled a niche for me in many ways. It gave me a musical creative outlet, turned out to be pretty good at it. I excelled in performing and leadership. And, once I got out of the freshman sophomore phase, I realized, okay, I can be more of a leadership role as a, officer of the band or so. My senior year was on the field, accepted trophies, things like that. And so early years, I have fond memories. And, at the end of your life, you look back at certain things and you check off boxes. You're like, I'm proud of that. That's one I will always remember. We won trophies that were taller than me, 6 foot and above. And it was amazing to have that kind of experience, entertain others, be rewarded for it, and just a great all-around experience.
Oh, sounds excellent. School doesn't always bring those kind of memories, so that's good.
I actually hated school. I was so dumb. I wasn't dumb until I started realizing too late I need to apply myself. I saw my friends getting accepted to colleges and that they applied to. I wanted to go, of course, to the University of Georgia. I just like there was no other way. I'm going. And they sent me a decline letter. I now have a degree on the wall and a ring on my finger from the school that said you're not smart enough to come here. I didn't get there originally, but I graduated school with a music scholarship, went to West Georgia College. It's now West Georgia University. And I applied myself, and I didn't make the mistake of going in and drinking like crazy and partying the first year. I really put my nose to the grindstone. Like I graduated from my high school and was thinking, gosh, I'm holding a diploma and I don't know anything. And so I took that humility and applied it towards my scholastics. And I was going to earn my way into Georgia. I was going to make them recognize me. And when I applied at the end of my sophomore year, I was accepted. So I finished out the last 2.5 years at the University of Georgia, and now that great degree of history. And I work at a bank. So anyway, so it was another, kind of a checking the box type of moment of someone telling you can't. Well, I'll show you. That's actually how my book got started. My friend in Atlanta, he's an author, Kenneth Mead. I may have had a couple of beverages too many during a holiday. I called him up. I said, hey, I was watching The Expanse at the time. And I found out that show was originally a book and it was co-authored. They had one author's name, but it was two guys. I was like, ooh, Kenny and I should do that. And I've known Kenny since second grade, like just young, right? And so I called him up and I said, hey, man, we should write a book together. And politely, he's like, no thanks, man. So just like anybody else, like, well, I'll show you. Not knowing what the heck I was doing, I wrote my first novel in 4 months. And that is The Photo Jumper. The concept came from a dream. I was like, what am I going to write about? I woke up from a dream, and in the dream, it was a sepia-toned picture I was looking at. And I immersed myself into the photograph. And I don't remember all the details, but I remember coming away and waking up thinking, ooh, that's a cool concept. What if, and all creativity starts there. What if you could enter a photo and interact with it? It's its own realm, its own world, the photo realm. And so the more I thought about it, what would you do? I'd probably go to a lot of places, some naughty places maybe that I shouldn't go to. Maybe I go to, my wife may be listening. Let me clean that up. So yeah, maybe I go to Vegas. Maybe I go to Hawaii. Maybe I go somewhere where no one is, right? Or fast travel. It's really time travel, but it's always in the past. We can take a photo right now, and it's when we look at it, it's seconds old. So it's a moment in time. And so it's kind of cool to think, okay, I'm going to go into this photo. Maybe you don't even know what's there. And that's really the intrigue. That's where the conflict, that's where the story is. What lies beyond this photo? Almost a behind the scenes. Who took the photo? What was going on at the time? How many photos do we have out there just after 150 plus years since the images and the photography became its own industry? Tons of it, and every day. And so for me, being able to go into this time capsule and have a character that can interact with it, how would you use it? Well, at first it's fun, But, to write a story, you got to have conflict. And so I thought, so what? So I was really hard on myself about, well, so what? Well, Allister, my protagonist, he uses that ability, that photo jumping ability, to dive into photos and solve his best friend's murder. And so there's some other subplots too, but that's it. You got this guy who can jump into photos, and it's more than that. It's media. He can jump into audio cassettes. He later finds out within the book he can jump into VHS tape. This is all analog type equipment. He jumps in and he experiences what it's all about. He gets himself into trouble a lot. So I've been asked, can you give us an idea of the character of Allister? And I like to think of Allister as the Joker is a good guy, and the guy's always at his wit's end and laughing all the time. That's not really Allister. He's a rebel without a clue. He tries to do the right thing, but he doesn't always win. Sometimes that devil on his shoulder beats the angel, and that lands him into some hot spots. Some that injure him, some that threaten his life. They threaten his relationships. But he's not alone. He's got some friends, and so he's also trying to overcome a past that's been difficult. So when I looked at, and by the way, I'm professionally edited, although I'm an independent. If I was looking at some of the editorial comments from my editor earlier, and it talks about it's emotionally resonant with a high level premise. That's it in a nutshell. For me, I like to take a lot of personal experience and embed that in Allister. A lot of me is in that character. I don't know how an author doesn't write about what they know, right? Or research the heck out of it. So that's where my history degree comes to help me. She says, I did a bang up job of researching whatever the environment is. If he jumps to England, or if he jumps to India, or wherever he jumps to in that photo, I do an extensive amount of research for the time period and the culture, and then make it exciting, right? If you go back and you just see he has fun all the time, winning at Vegas or lounging around in Hawaii, who cares? But now if you've got a motivator to go and find out what really happened, why your best friend was murdered, now we have a compelling story that I want to read, and hopefully others will too.
So I was just wondering, before we get fully immersed in the story, regarding your writing style and time. So you did discuss how you were inspired.
Yeah.
So first of all, how long ago was it then that you started writing it? Because that's very fast. So 4 months, obviously, you were inspired to write that.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't know what I was doing, but when I told others, they're like, "Wow, you wrote a novel in 4 months? Like professionals do that." I'm like, "Well, I'm not a professional." I started this in February. It was 2 years. This has been kind of 2 years in the making. I wrote it in 4 months. Now, granted, my first manuscript, it was crap. So my beta readers, thank you for reading that. Thank you for giving me honest feedback. Shout out to them. I love my beta readers. They give you the truth. Then I found my editor, and my editor is Charlene J. Moore. I don't work for her. She works for me. I pay her a lot of money to rake me over the coals, but she's fantastic. And by the way, I must say, I went through 3 editors before I found her. And so third time isn't the charm, it's the fourth time. Charlene is great because she is a coach and she's also a cheerleader. Attaboy on this, not so good on this. This needs work. And so she keeps me honest. And we have a good working relationship. And she strengthened my narrative, expanding, deepening relationships, expanding, really cool scenes within the photo jumper. I asked her recently, I said, why would someone read the photo jumper? She said, let me think about that. She took a full day. And then she came back to me, and it really boils down to this. If you go to watch Star Wars, you're looking for sci-fi and robots that do cool things and Jedi with mind tricks and some pretty cool looking aliens that talk all kinds of different languages, even though they all speak English, like Star Trek. But the reason you would read Photo Jumper is because you've got a person who's almost polar in personality with a unique ability that no one else has. And he solves crime applying that ability with the personal motivation of vengeance and justice. He had to find his best friend's murderer, find the culprit, and bring him to justice. It wasn't done, and so he did it. He had to find compelling evidence, and it wasn't the first time, it wasn't the second time, but third time, about the third time. That's actually the name of one of the chapters near the end. I won't give away that spoiler, but you go to the photo jumper because what photo is he going to go into? Can he get out of it? What does he encounter while he's there? And can he overcome himself? A lot of conflicts I think that we have, it's just the human experience. You have an internal conflict, whatever it may be. Some people, struggle with addiction. Others struggle with finances. Others struggle just to get along with their closest relative or friends and other people. So I wanted to have a very human aspect of he's struggling with himself. He's also struggling with alcohol within this. And he's also got external forces against him as well. In this case, it's how does he overcome not necessarily the justice system, but how does he make a compelling case for something that's like wrapped up and done? How does he get the bad guy, right? Matt. My beta readers, they hate Matt, and for good reason. You know what? This is a good time I'm going to give you a little bit of exclusive. There's a missing chapter. I haven't posted it yet. We've got to edit that and vet it, but there's a missing chapter on the villain. Why does he do what he does? That will be posted for free on my website, tonybible.com, in the near future, and probably within this, the next 12 months or so. So after you read the photo jumper, if you want to know more about Matt and that missing chapter, go to my website. It'll be for free. It won't have too much of a spoiler if you end up reading that, years from now, and you end up picking up photo jumper later on. But we actually had to take that out. My editor said, scratch this. And I didn't want to scratch it. I was really tied to, right, kill your darlings. That was a darling I was unwilling to kill. I was like, no, because another person said, I want to know more about Matt. We should know his backstory. Why does he do what he does and all that? And I get it. So it's out there. Maybe it just wasn't likable, or maybe it was too much of a turnoff. He's a bad dude. So I made that a missing chapter. We'll put that out there for free, and you can, take it or leave it if you want at the website.
Yeah,
There's some other freebies out.
No, I was gonna say there felt like maybe something was missing about Matt in the book. Yeah, it felt like maybe you wanted to say more about his backstory, or at least the readers that I'm sure definitely want to know something about his backstory. Yeah. So okay, we now know that there is something coming.
But yes, so yeah, I'll have the missing chapter out there, and I'll send it to you first. How about that? You can be one of my beta readers of the missing chapter.
Sure.
Readers want to know, why does someone do what they do? And I kind of had the villain of in Othello, right? I'm going Shakespearean here. Sorry, folks, but doing evil for evil's sake. It wasn't necessarily evil guy, like, okay, the Mr. Hyde in the corner or something, real creepy guy. He is a creep, and he is a bully for sure. But there's more to it than that. I've said this before in other podcasts. Mental health is kind of a buzzword. Um, I've got some personal experience with that. Who knows if I'm mentally capable or sound or not, but within my family, very personally, I've had to deal with others who have struggled with mental health, especially as they've gotten older with dementia, and the person you knew is not the same. So in this case, we've got someone who's young and off to a bad start. He's privileged and he abuses it. He's big, former football player, ends up getting injured and getting out of it. But without revealing too much, this guy's he's off to he has all the ingredients to be a person who can have a positive influence on community. And instead, he's the complete opposite. And on the flip side of the coin, you have Allister. He's not the huge brute that this other guy is, that Matt is. Young, punk, rebel, leather jacking wearing guy. Think Chris Cornell from Soundgarden. He's kind of when I think of image, that's the image I get, and hopefully that comes across in the book. And passionate, maybe overly passionate in wrong ways. And so he's fighting with the lighter side and his dark side. And with Matt, the dark side has won. And Allister, there's still a chance for the light side to win.
That's interesting because you can see the conflict in Allister for sure. It's interesting that you play those two off each other like that. I mean, it does happen a lot in the world, doesn't it? We see people with a lot of opportunities when they're younger, maybe more than they deserve or more than they can handle, and then going off the rails in the wrong direction. Maybe too much expectation. A lot of let's say that the children of highly successful people, um, like the billionaires and stuff like that, you'll see like they'll end up being disturbed, shall we say, perhaps not the right kind of upbringing to deal with that.
Yeah, I think everyone has someone that comes to mind of, if it's a trust fund baby or the progeny of a celebrity or famous musician, and they squander whatever they have. They're privileged. And so there's a lesson to be learned in that. Me coming from humble beginnings, God, I live below the poverty line. And so you just have to earn everything along the way. And that's been my drive. Just stop being poor, right? And stop being poor, find a better way. And we're still in a country where you can do that. And I think having been raised in the 80s, it gets kind of, it's like that party guy, like I'm number one, right? That was kind of the tropey type of mentality I think a lot of Americans had, like, hey, we're number one. It's probably existing now. We may have someone in office that says that way too much. We're number one, right? And everyone must acknowledge that. So for me, you're still in a country where you can realize the American dream. I would argue it's a little more difficult, especially with being a banker, knowing the financial rates and the APRs and things, and trying to get a down payment on houses that are more expensive than they ever have been with unrealistic APRs. But you know what? I made it. If I can make it, and I'm not that bright, others can too. So I'll get off my soapbox there. It sounds like I'm trying to sell something, for finances, and I'm not. Honestly, I won't say I'm even trying to sell my book. I want people to read my book. I have recently made this free through summer. It's like for the next 90 days on Amazon's Unkindled, free Unkindled. So go to Amazon. That's where it's at. That's the only place I'm at right now. If you're not sure, go to my website. You can click read sample. No downloads, no signups for subscription. I'm doing everything wrong, Edwin. I just want my gift to the world is my stories. So you can go and read samples for free on my website. If you like it, sure, throw some money at me if you want to, or just download it from free if you've got a Kindle at Amazon. This isn't my only book, by the way. I wrote a book, Remember Me, A Love Against Time. It will be my only love story. I should say that there is a love interest. There's actually a weird love triangle within Photo Jumper. But Remember Me is a dedicated love story. I told my boss I was writing, and she said, "Oh, you should write a love story." And, after throwing up in my mouth a little bit, I thought, you know what? That's a challenge. I'm never going to write a love story. So let's do that, kind of do my one token love story, get that out of the way, and go back to sci-fi writing. It has better reviews than the Photo Jumper. It's got like it's only like 5 people that have read it, but people really are drawn to that. No one guesses the ending in Remember Me. So if you ever get some spare time, maybe it's the cure for insomnia. If you gotta, if you can't sleep, go check out Remember Me, A Love Against Time. People seem to love that. I should also take some time to plug future work. I've got a book coming out, hopefully by September, that was inspired. Well, it's credited to Ernest Hemingway. You may know that name. He is credited with the first microfiction. Stop me if you've heard this before. So, with Ernest Hemingway, back in the 1920s, he and a bunch of authors were sitting around at a dining table, and he says, I can tell a story in 6 words. They laughed. Okay, sure. Let's put some money on that. So they put $10 down on the table for that. And they said, okay, tell us your 6-word story. And that 6-word story is this: for sale, baby shoes, never worn. So if you're like me, the first time you hear that, you're like, huh? I don't get it. And then maybe you reread it, right? For sale, baby shoes, never worn. Now, the never worn is where it's at. And let your mind run wild. So when I told a coworker this, or I tell other people the story, they say, "Ooh, what happened? Was the baby born? Did it experience crib death? Was it never born? Did the mother survive? What about the father? Who's selling the shoe?" So all that to say, I took that to heart and I thought, man, by the way, everybody forked over their $10. He won the bet. So I took that as a challenge and I wanted to come up with 100 microfictions. And I did. So it's called 100 microfictions with macro meaning. That'll be out by September. I'm going to keep that cheap because it only took a couple of weeks to write, but it's one of those things where I was inspired by another book, a philosopher who did all kinds of crazy stuff back in the 60s. I was in Hawaii at a used bookstore and he had a couple of lines from meditation, a lot of empty space. And I thought, dang, there's all this empty space above and beneath. This is kind of a waste of paper until you read what he wrote. And it was meditative. You sat the book down after reading one page, you're going, huh, ooh, that's good. And you pondered over it. It's a thinking man's type of book. Flip a page, another one. Sometimes I would read a page and I would that's it. I would put the book down and say, well, I'll pick this back up later, maybe tomorrow. And so I ended up reading like one page at a time, really kind of saturating what the meaning was. And so I wanted to have the same thing with the 100 microfictions with the macro meaning. So that'll be out by September. I've got 10 short stories that will be released probably by December. And more weirdness. It'll be a blend of modern fiction and fantasy. For any of you role players out there, I've got a rollicking good time with kind of a D&D type of setting, right? So for those of you who roll dice periodically with Dungeons and Dragons, you're going to love one of those stories. I've also got a Weird West in there. I did that for a friend of mine who's since passed. That one's for him. And I wasn't really big into the Weird West, but it's actually a character that I role played. And he ended up being a table favorite. And because there were so many laughs and good times at that table, I thought, that this needs to be shared with others. And when I started to game master, lead games, become a dungeon master, game master for other settings, when I captivated my players and people go, "Oh, what the hell?" or "Oh, crap, what?" I knew I had them. That's your hook. And so my thought was, this entertainment that we have here needs to be shared with others. And if you've ever role played and you've been a game master, players can screw up your plot better than anybody. They do the unexpected stuff all the time. Like, I want to go left. No, you weren't supposed to go left. Well, I try to create these open world environments so that whatever choices they make, I have a response, even if it's at random through some type of weird table. Well, at the gaming table, we had a lot of good memories. In my gaming group, we still meet every Tuesday. Uh, I've been gaming with that group for 26 years. Now I'm really giving my age away. How many people? Some people aren't even that old. And maybe like 26 years. This guy's been role playing longer than I've been alive. But I'll tell you that some of the best moments I've had have been for free. Role playing. You may not, just as a player, as long as you got some dice, maybe even borrow some if you're just starting. It sounds like I'm really promoting, role playing, and I don't get paid. I don't have any. I don't have a Patreon. I don't get funded by. I'm just telling my truth here, right? Roll the dice. Good entertainment there if you're creative with those experiences at the table and role playing. I put those into stories, and now they're in writing, and so now, yes, they can be shared with the rest of the world, and they can be just as entertained. I've got a couple more stories in mind. Actually, the Photo Jumper sequel. I'm 80,000 words into that. That's near to being done. And oh my gosh, you do not know what's coming. In the setting and the lore of the Photo Jumper, the first book is really personal. Well, there's still, a lot of personal moments in the second one, but the implications of what happens there in that setting is national. And I got chills just now. Oh, I was writing this morning, 5 a.m. I get up at 5 a.m. I try to put in at least half an hour to 2 hours every day, right? Working man's author, James Scott Bell, and just put in the work and start writing. I'm a little emo on this character that I came up with, and I'm talking too much about the sequel, but man, am I passionate about that right now. It's just guns blazing because You don't have to worry about backstory. You know who the characters are. And I wanted it to be a little bit like Empire Strikes Back. When you've watched Star Wars Empire Strikes Back, at the end of that movie, at the end of Star Wars, things are not good. Luke has his freaking hand cut off, right? He just found out the worst person in the universe is his dad. Well, okay, let's deal with that. And then it ends. What? No, of course you're going to go see the third movie when it comes out 3 years later. So I wanted that same kind of feeling with the Photo Jumper and the sequel. And that working title is The Waymakers. It may change, but ooh, man, I think I'm onto something, buddy. I'm passionate about the villains, plural. I give background to one of the major characters, Mila, who leads the way in the first book here. Beta readers love her, by the way. I do too. You got to love your character. James Patterson, you need to give a beep about your characters, because if you don't, no one else will. Thank you, James. So yeah, you need to give a crap about your characters. And she didn't have a backstory. That's going to be vetted more. That'll be explored more in the second one. And I've got a surprise visit from a Big Ugly also in the second one. That's just coming up. So I got a blend of new villains and backstory for favorited characters and side characters coming out. We haven't even talked about Grayson yet, right? Should we take a moment to talk about Grayson?
Sure, we haven't really we introduced the story a little bit, but we didn't really.
I'm all over the place. You're gonna have to edit the crap out of this, dude. So you know what? Let me pause and you ask me some questions, and I'll see if I can shorten my answers and responses.
You're going through my whole list, which is great. I don't have to do anything for this.
Okay.
So just to summarize, I guess for listeners, which you have covered throughout the discussion, but this is the story of Allister McClamroch as your main character. He's discovered he has this ability to jump into photos and interact with the people and environments within the photos, which is the amazing part to me. And then he's haunted by several events from his past. So you mentioned the death slash murder of his friend. And for me, what was the one thing that was interesting was a past flame as well. So you actually,
Yes.
so you say you only wrote one romance story, but you framed this one also as a romance in a way, bookended it with all the sort of murder stuff in the middle. Not to give any spoilers that way. I mean, it starts off as, let's say, obsession, perhaps, but so I thought that was interesting as well. I was going to ask you about that. What sort of inspired you to start it with the romance part rather than, let's say, some foreshadowing of the murder?
Sure. So we're talking about Penelope, and I believe that's chapter 2. What the emphasis or the inspiration behind that was actually, again, personal experience. There was I think we all go through some type of X that we may regret. And I need to reiterate in case my wife listens to this, I am happily married, but there was a girlfriend that I cared for and had a very long relationship, and we ended it. We actually got back together and we ended it again. And, I don't know if that was a mistake, but I took the regret of that and kind of the second flame type of mentality and applied it to Allister. What if you got dumped? What if you separated or were separated by a person you cared deeply for? And in the real world, it's never going to happen. It's never going to ignite. But in an alternative reality, in the photo realm, it's always alive and always vibrant. Yet, there's still a problem there because of the confines and restraints within the photo realm. Once you're in the photo realm, time's limited. It's only 12 hours. For some mystical unknown reason, he gets kicked out. Okay, so he can't live there. Limited time only, right? So then there's also these weird invisible walls. Like if you think about a picture, right? Any rectangle, you can only see what's in there. You don't know what's behind the photographer. You don't know who the photographer is. You don't know what's beyond any of the walls or over the next hill. When Allister goes into the photo realm, he has some space. He can walk around. He walks around New Orleans, right, during Mardi Gras, but he's limited. He's confined. And he's confined almost like a mime. He bumps into these invisible barriers. What the hell? Why can't I go here? another mystical unknown. And so there's familiarity within the photo realm of what we know in the real world, but there's also a lot of unknowns. Why is it like that? A little bit of a Twilight Zone. Love the Twilight Zone. For those of my generation, there's a reason why they had numerous seasons of it over numerous decades. Same thing with kind of modern day versions of that with Black Mirror. I like to keep it weird, and so not everything has an answer, and that's okay. But I do want the mysticism and the what the heck is going on there, just like we have in our real world, but in this alternative reality of the photo realm. And so, back to the point of Penelope, it's the girl he couldn't get over, and he's really attached. And that is the one photo that means more to him than anything else. It's why he keeps it in his wallet. It's why it's always protected. It's always on his person. And so, there's something, I mean, they're a little off about that, right? You're hung up on a person who's not real, yet you can be with them and you can interact with them. Fortunately and unfortunately, this setting is basically at a Dave and Buster's. No real place to be intimate at Dave and Buster's, right? And the other thing is in the real world, Alistair's aging. So he's not going to be able to do this forever. When he jumps, fast forward 20 years, he's probably got some gray hair, maybe no hair, like I lost mine. And he's not going to be able to jump back to that photo and look like the same old Alistair. So even then, time is against all of us. And it's against him and his ability to jump back. Same thing for Sam, his brother, his best friend who gets murdered. Sam, by the way, is a genius. I may be jumping ahead here, but so with Sam, give a crap about your characters. Who cares? This guy died. Sam had come up with, he's basically a savant for his age, child prodigy. He's going off to like an Ivy League school. He even before high school, he's got offers, but he's chosen to stay to his detriment, which we find out. But he's that smart guy who is like, hey, this guy is the guy who can probably find a cure for cancer. And he creates something in a Google experiment within the book that like solves or identifies cancer within lung. That's well researched, by the way. Did a lot of research on cancer, and a lot of that shows up in my other book, Remember Me. But with Sam, that's a character. This is a guy who's not average, not your normal Joe. He's going to change the world for the betterment of mankind. And because he chooses to stay to have more good times and really relish his youth and be with his best friend, he gets murdered. That's tragic. So Alistair wants to make that right. We should say that that's early on, not necessarily the first chapter, right? The opening lines, I want to grip you by the throat and not let go. And that's why my opening line is, my soul is ready for death. Is yours? That's one of the themes I like to carry throughout this book. I think everybody wants to know what happens in the afterlife, what's going to happen in our life and after. And that's going to be a compelling theme that runs into the second book and probably through a lot of my work. I have a fascination with what's on the other side of the veil. With that said, I'm not an atheist. So, by the way, my last name's kind of unique, right? With my last name is Bible. There's a lot of things you can't be. Well, you can't really be an atheist. It'd be kind of weird if you were. You can't be a criminal. You can't be a bad guy. You can't be a liar. There's a lot of things you just can't be with my last name, Edwin. So you can get away with whatever you want. Right, Berg? You can be a villain. You can be a bad guy. I don't have that luxury. I have a high bar I have to live up to.
It could be a very ironic name for a bad guy.
Bad Bible.
I was curious. So your comment about it being real, like he's like the pocket universes that are basically the picture universes. So I want to geek out a little bit, maybe on the world building a little
Please
bit.
do.
And
Let's
you're
geek out together. Yeah.
you've got a superhero shirt on, and you're a DM. So I feel like that's okay.
Yes.
I find it really interesting. So the pocket universes, and in terms of sort of what's real, I think these days this is something that's coming up more and more, isn't it? With AI, with virtual reality. And there's an interesting quote from, I don't know if you've seen this, the Disney movie Free Guy. It's Ryan Reynolds' movie. He's a character in a video game that sort of
Yes.
gains self-awareness. Yeah.
My
So there's
daughters
one,
love that movie. Yes,
yeah, it's a great movie, and
it's
there's
well
one
written,
point.
well acted. Yep.
It is definitely. There's one point where he's questioning his reality as he's, as it's all falling apart around him, and he's meeting with his friend and he's saying like, what's all the purpose, right? What's the meaning for this?
Yeah.
What's real? And his friend says, this moment is real, this connection is real. And so I find that quite interesting when you think of the photo universes, those moments then, well, that person has moved on in, let's say, our world, that's basically captured a moment that was at least real, in that sense, right? It's sort of these pocket universes have then captured those moments. It's interesting to think that you have this sort of out of time reality that gets bubbled almost. That's almost how I saw it, as a bubble. I was curious then on the world building of this. I know you said you like to leave things a little bit hanging. How did you envision that? Because I see it as these bubbles, um, adjacent to our reality in a way that can be accessed by photos. But I'm curious how you envisioned that yourself.
Yes, thank you, Edwin, and thank you for the question because I love to talk about this. So, pocket realities, that's a great term. Wish I'd come up with it. So, yeah, within the photo realm, each pocket reality, I like to think of them as time capsules, right? Each photo, each piece of media, it's a moment in time you can go back and interact with. And by the way, by the nature of the analog equipment that he uses or that is used, that affects the pocket realm. So there's a scene where he goes back and a photo was taken, and it's a daguerreotype photo. Now, if you don't know what that is, you're forgiven because I didn't know what the heck it was either until I researched it. So think about, we have cameras on our phones now that fit in our pocket and snap all day, record video, and you can live stream. We're doing this on my phone right now. Let's rewind back to 1800s something. You had a box with glass and metal and oils and all this other stuff. And it took like a minimum of 8 hours to create one darn print. Imagine that. Who's got time for that, right? Well, who cares? So within that, what if the style impacts Allister's environment? And it does. Just the age of the photo. There's a scene, there's a chapter where he goes back to Albany, New York, and it's immediately after the Civil War. And the photo, it's bent, it's no longer white, it's yellowed with age, it's black and white. There's a lot of fuzz in it, a lot of static. You don't know what the heck. He jumps into it, and immediately he's affected. He can't remember why he's there because the age of the photo is affecting his memory. You think about old people, you think about maybe that they're not all there, they're forgetful. I'm forgetful all the time. So that's one. Well, then number two, let's go to the staticky pieces. The weird little black bubbles and the great on the horizon. It's always unclear. He doesn't really see a horizon. It's like this weird, creepy gray mist that at any point boogeyman can come out and get you. And as he's walking through the cold streets of Albany, and he sees horse-drawn carriages, he's hearing bells, and he's seeing men in top hats and suits and dressed proper. He keeps falling into these. He keeps stumbling, not just on ice, but in these pockets, these dark voids that have come through in the exposure of the photo. This is just one example of how the media affects his environment. It's affecting his mind. We still have the natural environment. It's Albany, New York, and I think it was, I forget the exact month, but it was cold. So he's being chilled by low temperatures, and he tries to dress the part like an actor, a really good wardrobe, but there's a problem with that, and that gets burned in a fire, so he loses a lot. And so, is he fitting in? He probably just his mannerisms. He's not fitting in as well as he should, just because of the amount of time that has passed. Even our vernacular over time, it changes, right? If you try to go to use some pop culture terms now, well, you're going to get some strange looks, right? If you talk to someone in the past. And so within that pocket, like each photo is its own mini reality. That's what the environment and how the photo was taken or how it was recorded, if it was, tape, an audio tape, an audio cassette, or if it was VHS and a visual medium, that's going to impact his experience.
Yeah, I really liked the idea that it was the analog photos that he could go into. And I don't know if that changes later on because of sort of more experienced characters teaching him. But what I really appreciated about that was that the analog recording process captures much more of reality in a way than the digital process does. Everyone says this about LPs versus CDs or things like that. I really like the idea that initially he can only go into the analog photos, because then you think, well, it's captured. Even the stuff you can't see has been captured because of whatever the vibrational states of the universe, etc. It's all, everything is there, versus digital, which is highly curated. So I really did like that. I was curious about the characters, because what you might think listening to this is that he goes into the photo and it's like a movie that doesn't change and he sort of play, but it's not, right? Because the characters do interact with him, as you said. Like if he uses the wrong words or modern language, they will give him a look. What are you saying? So they are sort of real entities within that pocket reality. Is that sort of how you viewed that as well? Because initially you think, oh, he's gonna jump in there, he's gonna just follow a set path, but no, he can actually change the way that short time frame plays out.
Yes, it begs a lot of questions, doesn't it? So I'm going to rewind a little bit, pardon the pun. We're going to rewind a little bit, but in this book, he does attempt a digital jump into his phone, and it scares the you know what out of him because it is not normal. And he avoids his phone for like a couple of days before he puts it back in his pocket. He's scared of his own phone. I will tell you in the sequel, Photo Jumper 2, he is going digital. And so, man, that opens up literally more universes, and it's just one more avenue. So, and it has to go that way for a younger generation to be compelled.
Right.
But back to your point, when we take photos of things, I'm not creating a virtual reality. I'm not creating 3D images. We're taking photos of something. If I do a selfie, it's me. It's me in this room or wherever setting I'm in. That's a reality, and it's a moment in time. And so he can go in, and it begs some interesting questions, right? What if he goes in, and I cover this? Is he changing history? Boy, they now there's so much sci-fi on time travel. You can really smoke will come out of your ears. What the hell is going on with this guy? My wife is watching a show on Netflix, and again, I don't work for him. I think it's called Dark. She got confused. Have you seen it, by the way?
No, I haven't seen that one. No.
I've seen bits and pieces, and so yeah, it gets hairy. This guy, he's almost in a maze of time, and it's kind of been done before. I want to do stuff that hasn't been done. Yeah, there's some time travel elements, but he can't stay there. He can interact with it, and whatever's going on there, it's real, but it's not. That's gonna mess with your head, dude. So when he comes back to the real world, how often does he wonder where he's at? Especially if if he's mental, that just compounds the problem. What is reality? What reality am I in? And so, yeah, he can go in and he can experience things that others already have in the past. He can also experience things real time that others can't now in the present. So I don't know if that answers your question, but for me, yeah, he can go into alternate this alternate photo realm in a moment of time, this living time capsule. He can get hurt, by the way, and does. He thinks he's safeguarded just because he's in a photo. No, he's actually more vulnerable, and therein is why he needs his friend Grayson to help him out. Now, if you've read enough of Grayson, he's kind of my Laurel and Hardy type of. They're the comedy duo. So when you see Grayson, yes, he's an authoritative figure, right? He's an authority. He's also a good friend, and he means well, but he's not exactly the sharpest knife in the drawer. So, yeah, he does some very human things that kind of put Allister in peril.
Yeah, that does get a bit funny, and actually plays into some of the things I was thinking about in terms of using the photos, because he does start to use them creatively to get in and out of places. One thing that came to my mind, which is not yet in the story, maybe you use it in the second book, I don't know. I was wondering, he could survive a fall potentially from almost any height. If he had a photo, he could jump into the photo and wait till it lands on the ground and then
Oh,
get out of it, right?
okay. So, wonderful question. So, think of it as it's reality, it's real, and it's familiar. So, if Alistair, let's say he just goes and throws himself off a really tall building, he's going to splat. Now, let's say if he doesn't jump out, right? He
But
can
if
jump in and jump out at will.
but what if, I mean, if he's jumping off a building in real life or
Oh,
thrown off a building and he has the photo with him of, let's say, a peaceful meadow somewhere. He jumps
ooh.
into the meadow, wait 10, 20 minutes till he knows the photo's on the ground in the real world, then hops out of the photo at that point. So he could survive a real world fall potentially.
Thank you, Edwin. Thank you. This is a wonderful question and I'm going to answer that. If you're jumping down, you have some velocity, right? And then you jump into your pasture, like you're saying. Well, he's reset. He loses, he actually might collapse, right? Because he's gonna go into the photo realm and he's probably gonna hit the ground. I think of it as a sideways jump. So he's gonna hit the ground in the pasture and he's gonna get that dust himself off like, wow, I'm glad I had this photo. Otherwise, back in the real world, I was going to splat. You know what? Now I don't have any velocity. I don't have any momentum. I can go back into the real world, and maybe I jumped out maybe a couple feet before I splatted. Boom. He lands semi softly.
Yeah, because you
That's
did
how
it.
I think about it.
Yeah, so he could survive something like that then. Yeah, because you did one instance where there were momentum consequences, and I can't remember the
Yes.
situation now, but he ended up jumping out and smacking himself in the wall or something.
Yeah, one of my beta readers said it was really cool scene. So yeah, he's messed up because he was an alcoholic, right? So he'd been drinking. He hadn't been drinking that night, but he was hungover. He wasn't sleeping well and taken some pills, but he also took some allergy meds. That was a toxic combination. And so he felt fine going into the photo, but man, it just all worked against him at the wrong time. And he's all loopy in the back of a police car. And this car is going 40, 50 miles an hour down back roads. He's been arrested for trespassing, and that invisible barrier that we talked about earlier, it's coming up. He doesn't know what's going to happen. He's been to it before and he can't pass through it. And so now what? What happens? Is he going to splat going 50 miles per hour in the back of a police car inside the photo realm? And so, yes, he is thrust out of that and back into the real realm, tumbling at fortunately a lower speed, but again, to his detriment, right? He fortunately, a wall stops him, unfortunately. And so,
Real
yeah,
wall.
being a
Yeah.
being a photo jumper isn't easy. It's one of those things I had to say, so what? I don't want him to be overpowered like Superman. He needs to have flaws to be a compelling character. And so that's one of them. How does he get out of situations? What's going to happen in this weird realm? And am I going to get out of this okay? Maybe not okay, and maybe not without some scrapes and bruises. And definitely when he meets Matt, he comes away with much worse injuries.
There's a few other interesting questions I had about the geeking out about the Pocket Universe stuff.
Please do. I love
Um,
talking about it.
so one of them, I guess, is he can bring things in with him as he
Yes.
learns. How
Yep.
big of something can he bring in? Like, could he sit in a car and bring the whole
Ooh,
car in?
damn. You know what? I may have to do that. I may have to because it's in contact with him. So the original premise was whatever's on his person, something he could carry, right? Even if it's like a box full of like weights, he could go into the photo with that. Now, coming out with things, first thought was, why not go to Fort Knox and carry out all these gold bricks and you're just rich? And no, no, doesn't work. No, doesn't work that way. He does bring out some small items like dried grass, muddy boots, dampness on his shorts. I think the biggest thing he pulls out is an oven mitt, right, from the campfire with Sam. But he can't take out like really big items. Now, taking something in, if he's driving in, can I? I'm going to play with that idea. Now, if he's driving, could he drive in a tank or a big bomber, right? Ooh, what if he was a pilot and he saw a photo too? Does he take the whole plane with him?
Well, so
Boy, that would cause some chaos, wouldn't it?
that's on the line of what I was thinking of because
Ooh,
the space geek in me was thinking about space travel.
yeah.
Could you use the photo part of it to do basically hyperspace jumps between points in the photos? You take a photo from a
Yes.
telescope, bring the whole ship with you in, and then jump out where you were
Yeah.
or something.
I cover this in the sequel, and my simplest thought was, can he jump twice? Photo within a photo. So he goes in one photo, boom, he's in a photo realm. He sees something on the wall. Can he go to that photo? Answer is yes. That's a bit of a spoiler, but man, it gets really compelling in the second book I'm writing. One of the things I want to do is have him. I want him to see a picture of the International Space Station. Now, here's a question. It's not an exact science. Where are you going to jump? Are you going to jump inside the
Exactly.
space station? Or are you going to jump into an airless vacuum in the void of space at negative 400 degrees? that would be a problem and an instant death. So he better plan that one carefully.
I guess it would depend on the time delay within the jump, wouldn't it, as well?
Yeah.
Because if you're moving
Yeah.
fast enough, the frame of reference will change.
Yeah. And so, yeah, I like to think that whatever momentum he's got in the real world is what's going to carry through into the photo realm and vice versa. If he's in the photo realm, as if when he was, in the back of the patrol car and speeding at, many miles per hour, he's thrust out rather than splatting. So kind of a spoiler there, but people enjoyed that read. And you mentioned my shirt, right? I love the X-Men. As a kid, I could afford the X-Men comic book. And, years ago, I laid on the floor and I read comic books. I loved the X-Men and I would listen to the radio. Now's a good time to mention that I create playlists. Just like if Edwin, if you were like me, you made a lot of mixtapes.
Yeah.
Current day, you make playlists. So you can go to Spotify and you can look at my playlist, and they are the same as the book title. So the Photo Jumper and Remember Me, I Love Against Time. You'll find playlists. And if you want some sneak peeks at the sequel, you can find the Photo Jumper 2, The Waymakers, and listen to the songs. And those are songs that fit the part for the theme. And so there's that out there. But so essentially, I'm doing what I was doing when I was a kid, man. I used to lay on the floor, read X-Men, listen to rock and roll music on my beat box, right? And now, fast forward 40 years, I don't necessarily read comics, but I'm all into sci-fi. Now I'm writing, I'm producing, not necessarily consuming. And I'm listening to, iTunes or Spotify, listening to these songs as I do it. So that's one thing that's been consistent throughout time. And going back to X-Men, Alister's a lot of things. He's a bit of a time traveler, but he's definitely a teleporter, right? My first thought was, how does he teleport into this photograph like Nightcrawler, right?
Right.
Love Nightcrawler, great character within the Marvel universe. They should do more with him, honestly. But I love how he was portrayed in the movie. Right off the bat, he threatens the president of the United States in that movie. Sorry if you haven't seen that, but it's also like a decade old, and you should have already seen it by now. If you don't know who Nightcrawler is, it's time well spent. Go figure him out. Anyway, so yeah, so Alistair can teleport, he can time travel. He's a crime fighter, but kind of an unwilling. He's working to become a private eye. This was really a life-defining moment. The murder of his best friend set him on this path of, you know what? Life's overrated. I'm okay with death at a young age, which is uncommon, and maybe it's unsettling. He shouldn't have these kind of dark thoughts so early in his life. He's in his early 20s. And then also, working to become a private eye. He's got this unique ability to help him with his craft and also have a little fun at the same time. But he doesn't know everything about it. And that's where Mila comes in. Mila is really the unspoken hero of this. She shows him a lot. And I'm not going to give too much away.
Yeah, I did feel that this had the feeling at some point of a superhero origin story. And then sort of by the end, I was like, well, or it's more of a thriller team put together, like a super team almost. But yeah, I think you've answered your own question about the space station then, because unless he's moving at 25,000 miles an hour or something, he's not going to be able to get on board or whatever that is.
Right, because even that's
flatting on the wall.
Yeah, I mean, so you get magic physics at work. We can get onto a plane and that travels at hundreds of miles per hour, and we can be in another place within a few hours later. His is instantaneous.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's the big time save there. So yeah, I should say that if I could draw, this book never would have been made, because man, I love comics. We live in a visual medium. I wish I could draw. So what I'm really doing, Edwin, is I've taken a character I would have made a comic book after and wrote the story. It's my easiest medium. And I gotta say, it's antiquated. I'm writing books when everybody's on their phone and watching videos or listening to Audible. And yet there's still a niche for books. And you have to ask why. And it's for one major reason. And it's the theater of the mind. If you have, how many movies have we seen based off of books?
Yeah.
And you've read the book, you're like, that didn't nail it. I don't think I've ever seen a movie that was better than the book I read, because guess what? I preferred my imagination, what it came up with in the imagery, than what I was being forced to see. And that's why we still read.
I would put a couple in the category, but they're usually in the middle of a series. And so the two that come to mind are number 5 in Harry Potter and number 2 in Hunger Games. And it's mostly because I didn't like the way the characters were portrayed in the books, and so the movie made it shorter, and so 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 it was less annoying. So the rest worked well. That was the main reason. Yeah. I was wondering then, so as someone who's religious, the pocket universes, the pocket realities have some consequence potentially on the concept of the soul. You have people who have snapshots of their lives exist in these pocket universes while the rest of them continues. And there are some tribes who consider that a photograph will steal your soul. So I just wonder if you sort of put any thought towards that in your world building as to the state of those people within those universes.
I have, and so excellent point. And yes, there was Native Americans who did not want to be photographed. Right? If you capture me, you're somehow taking my soul, and now you've got it on this print. I don't do a deep dive on that in the book, but we're going to wax poetic here and maybe delve into a little philosophy. With most people, it's just another picture, right? Just another selfie. I can go in. Did it? The biggest impact is personal. How does this affect you personally? What in the very first chapter, to rescue himself, I mean, he's being mugged, right? In the opening scenes, first couple of pages, and he gets injured lethally. And to save himself, he jumps back into time. Now, the best laid plans, are still ruined. He had this picture of World War II medic tent, right? And the thought was being is if he was ever in a dire situation, which he is in the very first opening scene, he could go there and get the treatment he needs via triage and survive. What he did not expect was that it was on a battlefront. It wasn't like MASH unit and it was far away in a safe, relatively safe place. There's bombs and tanks and snipers cracking all kinds of, fire in the distance. And it is a war zone. And he has put himself into deeper danger just by being there. And so the personal effect is, of course, you're trying to save yourself. And he finds the right type of treatment and medic. But, you take that experience, how does that influence him there coming back into the real world? There's something I want to take a moment and say I wanted to acknowledge the world's greatest generation. That's why I put that was kind of an afterthought. I'd written the book and I had this I don't know, this pervasive voice in my head, like, you need to write this World War II scene, you need to write this scene. And I did. I think in images and scenery. And so I put that out, and then my editor said, dude, you got this in the wrong space. You need to make this your very first opening scene, your first chapter. Here was a scene I wasn't even going to put into the first, it wasn't in the first manuscript. And then when I put it in there, she's like, oh, forget this. You've got to make this your opening scene. It's going to hook people left and right. And it has. And so now that that's done and it's set, I look at it as the personal effect. Wherever you're at, like you travel, you take something in every experience and you personalize it, good or bad, right? You could go to Paris, right? Maybe you propose to your beloved on the Eiffel Tower, right? You're going to take that love back with you. If you go to a person who's struggling with whatever ailment in the hospital, you take that back with you. You take that negative thing with you. And so I think that personally, every experience we have is personally moving. Now there's levels, right? There's some that are more urgent, more extreme, more passionate. And then there's some that's just having coffee on Tuesday, right? But everything makes up, we are the entirety of our choices and our experiences. This is compounded with the photo jumper and the photos that he goes into.
So we take from the experiences, and he would take from the experience of the photos. Does the person in the photos, for example, Penelope, who he's fixated with, does she leave anything in that photo? So we take from the experiences, but is something left of the person being in that photo, for example? And if so, that's a frightening thought for the selfie generation because
Yeah.
fractionating your soul potentially.
Well, so maybe it's not as frightening if you explore the concept of like multiple universes, which Marvel has succeeded at doing with the multiverse, right? If you watch, I don't work for them, but I watch the Yes Files, tons of fringe theory out there. I don't believe all of it, but damn, it's entertaining. They talk about it there as well. But you look at multiple universes, it's another reality. For what we know, that was his past, yet he's stuck in it. That's
Right.
really it. So, you know, who she is in that photo is not who she is now.
Now.
Penelope has moved on. She had aspirations. It's revealed what happens in the relationship and how it evolves and how it progresses. But who she is, think about who you were 10 years ago, Edwin. I couldn't tell you what I was eating that day, but I could tell you probably who I was, my job, my circle of friends, even at that time, what was going on. I am that person that I was, but more and more. So it's kind of like it's almost like as if you were a senior looking back on your freshman year and just shaking your head like, what the hell was I thinking? Right?
Yeah. 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 It's interesting the way you phrased it as well, because Penelope is, let's say, that version of Penelope is stuck in that photo in the past, but also Allister's basically stuck in the past as well, even though he's living his life. So it's an interesting juxtaposition there. Yeah.
You nailed it. But how many of us are stuck in the past? I think there's moments where all of us have been stuck in the past, right? Um, maybe maybe I peaked earlier, right? We started the show talking about how I was in band and I went to President Clinton's inauguration, and as a group in the band, we had a lot of accolades, won number one awards and stuff. I'm not sure I've topped that, right? Since high school, right? Yeah, I went on, got a degree. Yeah, I'm professional within the banking industry. You know what? Who cares? I'm also a father. I'm also a husband. Hopefully, I'm succeeding at that. Guess what? There's no rewards for that except for what's intrinsic. But I would say that you've hit upon something that I'm glad has come through. Alistair is stuck in the past, literally and figuratively.
Hmm.
Fortunately, the literal sense, it's restrained by time. He gets kicked out after X amount of hours, or when he chooses to leave. But yeah, mentally, I think he's throughout this book. Gosh, he's hung up on an old girlfriend. He's stuck in the past. He's hung up on his old girlfriend. He's also hung up on his best friend who's no longer around. He got murdered. So he's hung up on that. He's hung up on in the real world because justice was not served. So it's living with unfinished business. And he's not really moving forward, is he?
No.
So that's a problem. And you know what? I'll raise my hand. I've been there. I had that problem where I couldn't move forward. Sometimes it's you that holds yourself back. And when you have that realization, that's when you can move forward. Other times, it's real easy to point the finger and say, you know what? JoJo's holding me back, or John's holding me back, or Jane, or whoever it is, and cast fingers. Typically, when you cast one finger out, you got five pointing back right at you, right? So take a hard look at yourself, and that's part of Alistair's arc. He has to constantly look at himself through the eyes of others and through the lens, pardon the pun, in the photos that he enters, or cassettes, or VHS tape, etc.
Right. Yeah. So to lighten it up slightly and go back to one more consequence of the photo jumping that occurred to me. So you've mentioned Mila already and a little bit of how they met. What occurred to me during the meeting was that in theory, you could have, assuming there were a group of jumpers, for example, throughout time or around the world, you could have jumpers from different times meeting as well, as long as the media was created after both of them were born, essentially, couldn't you? So one of my thoughts was that she came from the past, his past or something, or his future potentially.
Yes, and bravo, hats off to you. Yes, that's great thinking, and you're not alone. One of my beta readers said, "Ooh, I think I don't think she's from the same time period, right?"
Yeah.
We'll let that peter out within the book, but I do mention, you know what, there's a moment in the book where they're talking to each other and like, you know what, if we were born in any other time period, we'd be worthless.
Yeah.
If they were born before photography, one, they wouldn't even, they may have the ability, but it'd be latent. They wouldn't even be aware of it because there was nothing to interact with. So, yeah, that is in the photo realm, in the Twilight Zone spirit. I will answer your question simply. Yes, that is a possibility. If there is another person that has the photo jumping ability, it is conceivable that if they're looking at the same type of medium, picture, video, movie, whatever it is, that is their kind of singular meeting point, right? It's like going to the subway. You may enter from the north end, I can enter from the south end. We both end up in the subway at the bottom interacting with each other. That just kind of occurred to me. But no, that's a great question and it's fun to explore. And I may do that in the future. I've got plans for a series. This is a series, and I've got easily 3 formal books. I'd love to make this maybe an 8-book series. We'll see. By the way, I've already run this character arc out. At first, it was just okay. It's a dream. It's a concept, and then over time, you really begin to kind of. It's going to sound kind of creepy. You begin to live with these characters through daily life. I try to incorporate what's real and apply to how does this apply to this setting? How does this apply to my character? This character is going to become way more powerful than even I originally thought. I can't wait. It'll be bittersweet when I write the last book, but oh my gosh, where he goes. Did you ever watch The Sandman? Are you familiar with the DC Sandman?
I know of it, but I haven't seen it. No.
Netflix did a pretty good job, bringing to film an ethereal type of reality. And I think that the actor they got was well done. The writing was pretty good. I won't pretend that I read the comics. I used to go to the comic book shop, my favorite place to go, and I'd see Sandman posters. I'm like, who's this guy? And thank you, Wikipedia. You can go out there and kind of find out who Sandman is. When I started to research this character, whoa, this guy, the Sandman, is one of the most powerful characters I never knew about. Similarly, Allister, I mean, he's going places. Ultimately, you look at goals. Everybody wants their character, their book, their story to be read. I want that too. I'm not looking for fortune. I'm not looking for fame. I own the house. Yay. I want my stories to be read. So, they're free right now. Just get out there and read. I need reviews. That helps. But I see this. I was told by consultants, this can be a video game. This could become a series. You will add to the lore of Harry Potter and Game of Thrones, photo jumper. I believe that. Who knows if it will actually happen. By the way, this is a consultant. You pay them money, they tell you the truth and they move on, right? They're not trying to I paid them $130 and they're like, okay, not that your other content isn't good, but the photo jumper, this has got commercial potential. Those 2 words stuck out for me. This was a thumbs up or a thumbs down for me. Like, continue to go forward this or cut your losses and just scrap it. I was actually shocked to hear green light, go. So here we are. And okay, I need to get serious. Let's get a website. Let's talk about a marketing plan. But my marketing plan has been crap. James Scott Bell said, if you make your money back on marketing, consider yourself lucky. I think he's right because I've blown a lot of money on this. I've sold like very few books, but I'm optimistic and I'm in this for the long haul. I was told by a fellow independent author, like, you don't really get traction until like your 5th or 6th book. Well, guess what? I've only got 2 out there. I've got 2 more coming up by end of year. And my 5th one, I'll hit that sometime first quarter 2026 with the sequel. So I'm committed to this for the long haul, but there's also, it's rewarding. I've been told I have a way with words. Why wouldn't I use my strengths towards something creative? I've done this a lot. I've been a ghostwriter within my professional work life as a project manager for 27, 28 years within finance for major banking institutions. Let's make this, a little less nerdy and let's make it a little more fun and put this into fiction and fantasy and weirdness. And let's do it that way. I've had a hell of a ride doing this. I'm not a morning person, but I am now when I get in front of the computer and I'm sipping my coffee. I'm a pants writer, discovery writer, right? Like Stephen King. Just go. I don't know where this is going. I've tried milestone writing. It takes the fun out of it. I can't do it. I do like to have an ending in mind and a hell of an opening, and I can fill in the middle. And because I have scenes and I think about things, I dream about a lot. I wake up with ideas, and I'll wake up and I'll just go in 4 a.m. start get it out of my system, right? Get it out there, and I'll tweak it later. That's my writing habit, my style. I'm committed to doing this, even on weekends, even on holidays, even when we have like relatives over. So maybe when the in-laws are over and I want a little time to myself, I'll break away to the office and I start writing. And I'm writing the comic book that's in my head into my novels, into my short stories, that type of thing. I can't even remember what your original question was, but that I sure do enjoy talking about myself in the photo jumper.
Well, that's great. And it is great that you're a morning person as well. It gives you good time to write, and it
I've
also
become
is
that one. Yeah,
it's great
yeah,
for this interview because I believe we started at 8 o'clock in the morning your time. So
that's right. I've
that's
been up since
great.
five.
Yeah.
I was writing the sequel, so I'm good.
Yeah. We're getting close to being out of time. I got one more question, which is the big
No,
question.
no,
Yeah, we could
no. I
talk
got
forever.
time. I'll make time for you, Ed, when I'm enjoying this.
It's a lot of interesting stuff we can delve into, geek out on the
Let's do it
photo
again.
jumping universe. Definitely, we can have you back. I got a lot of topics we can bring you back for panels. I'm hoping to plan.
Sweet.
So my last big question is relating to the modern reality that might be arriving around the photo, let's say, pocket realities. So something that Photo Jumper does, perhaps preset. I got this word. I know how what it is, but I don't know how to say it. Presage is a possible coming fusion of virtual reality, AI in combination with 360 cameras. So you can maybe see where I'm going already with this.
Yes.
It's possible that we'll be able to actually, in a way, step into photos in the not too distant future. Now, you've had a look at this from the single person view with Allister, right?
Yeah.
But what do you think some of the ramifications would be when the entire world has the ability to speak to deceased loved ones, obsess over old flames, vent dark emotions over events of the past, and then also they can be stolen, right?
Ooh.
Stolen, shared, etc. So social media has already exposed a lot of our dark side,
Yeah.
um, and this will just turn it up to 110 basically. So what do you think? Because we might be facing very real ramifications of photo jumping in the not too distant future. What do you think that might play out in society as?
Man, that's a multifaceted question, and I've got many answers. This is a perfect question and a perfect segue to my sequel. You mentioned what would it be like to talk to deceased loved ones? Man, just wait. It's coming. You mentioned AI. I told you I like to write stuff that hasn't been done before. By the way, it's all been done before. Has it? So AI, I think, yeah, that's a reality. It's also a buzzword. Everybody's writing stories, but it's not new. What Lawnmower Man was a type of virtual reality and AI back when, God, when did he write that? 70s became a movie in the what 80s, 90s,
Yeah.
something like that. It's an old concept for me. What's the new spin on it? Well, Photo Jumper. Hey, Alistair, yeah, digital's coming. With that, AI is everywhere. You look at Google and you look at Copilot and all these different AI bots that are out there. He encounters them. What does he do with them? I've been playing around with Chat GPT AI and helping. How does he interact with that? He does it in a virtual space that he should not be in. And if we think about that, think about like firewalls and computer programs that will, purge anything that treats you as alien or a bug or a glitch. Those are the bad guys that come after him, and they do. So he's got. You think you had threats in the analog, man? That's tame compared to what we have with AI, right? And what can come in at you in that virtual environment. It's almost Matrix like.
Mm.
There's definitely a Matrix feel that comes up within the sequel, but it's also grounded because there's a character I introduce. Here's another exclusive, Edwin. Her name is Grace. And man, I am emo on Grace, dude, because this character hit me unexpectedly. It was around Halloween of last year. So I've been working on her development, her backstory, and how Alistair engages with her in the sequel for gosh, going on what, 10 months now? Almost 10 months. And so I think I've vetted her, I've flushed her out. There's still some polishing needs to be done, but she has contact and ears on the other side. And so we're going to have that discussed at a very, it's almost a primal level. You've got this Joan of Arc character who is really a legacy type of character. That's the character I want this person to be. She will be unforgettable if I do it right. And I'm working hard that it is done. But she can talk to those who passed on. So we've got that. We also have Allister, who's modern edge, baby. Let's jump into the phone. Let's go online. Let's interact with all the virtual badness that's out in our technical world, and increasingly technical world. Both are going to be explored. Now, as far as like the numerous eyes that are upon you, it's no shock that we're probably being recorded right now by someone else. We've been hacked. There's probably satellites looking in on us if we're doing bad stuff or if we're an enemy of the state or something. Fortunately, my last name is Bible and I am not, right? I'm halo around this head. I'm the angel. Look somewhere else for bad guys. You're not going to find it here.
Yeah,
I'll write about bad guys, but I am not a bad guy.
I'm sure the Zoom
So,
AI is tracking all the keywords we're saying.
yeah, we probably have a digital profile we're unaware of. Someone's out there reading about us if we ever, do something bad. All eyes will be upon Allister at some point. Our hero, he's going to be made to look the villain. And then what? What happens when you are that enemy of state and everyone, it's not just you against, a big bully from high school. It's you against SWAT teams.
Yeah, the biggest bully.
And then what? You're just a common Joe. Now what? And there's national implications for what I'm setting up. I've gotten some inspiration from another book I've been listening to on Audible. It's Edge of the World by Kyla Stone. I don't know her. I don't work for her. She writes well. I think she's influenced me heavily for the second book. So I've taken some inspiration and drawn upon her for The Waymakers. So yeah, digital's got to happen. And it'll be interesting how he explores that without getting hurt or killed in the process.
Right.
I don't know if I answered your question at the end. If you've got a follow-up question to any of those responses, I'm happy to answer that.
Yeah. So the one I guess expansion of that is that if we all end up with that ability potentially, so what I'm thinking is as all these technologies merge as well, so we talk AI separately, VR separately, digital separately, but once they all merge, and I have interviewed people who are working on literally with AI to create, let's say, letters, potentially video from people who have passed away, your family members. You feed them in enough information and they can generate something that seems like it comes from them. And so if we merge that with images and video of family members and then have the AI to do its thing in a virtual reality, we could then jump literally ourselves into a photo. And then we have everyone on the planet being able to be a photo jumper to some degree, obviously not to the same degree as Allister. But that ends up being a really crazy world.
You've hit upon something excellent, Edwin, and you're fooling yourself, aren't you? Like when you put on that VR headset today, the weird Google headset, you know what it is. You can take it off whenever you want. At some point, your nose and your eye socket's going to start sweating. You're like, my neck is starting to feel weird, and I need to go to the bathroom or something. I can't do that with a VR. I hope you don't do that with a VR headset. That's a weird image. Get that? I have to unsee that now. But bottom line is, to be serious, you're fooling yourself. It's an escape, but is it healthy? And that's where the health component comes in. You know what? I may love Penelope to death, and I can put on my VR headset, or I can jump into that photo and I can be with her. And it's not real. So at that point, then what? At some point, you have to come back to reality. And it's not what you want. And so how do you move forward? How do you move forward through life in a reality you don't want?
Yeah, it reminded me when I was first looking at, when I was going through the book and we had the scenes with Penelope, one of the things that reminded me of was the scene in the first Harry Potter book, The Mirror of Erised, where he's dwelling over the image of his parents who have passed away. And this is sort of exactly the same thing, except it'd be actually more in the photo jumper or in the high tech version, because he could be with them. But again, like you say, fooling yourself, and you end up dwelling on that life. Now, Allister does overcome it through the story in his arc. But it's like you say, not everyone would potentially.
Have you seen the Umbrella Academy?
Yes, yes.
That was from Dark Horse Comics. I never read the comics, and they look vastly different from what we see on Netflix. That
Yeah.
was a bang. That was an awesome, awesome show. If you watched all this, have you watched all the seasons? I don't want
Yeah,
to give
yeah.
anything away.
No spoilers.
We can make some parallels. So 5, right?
Right.
Small, tidy guy, well spoken, drinks way too much coffee, and he's a teleporter, right? He can jump places. In a critical scene, I think it was season 2 in the finale, dire straits, he's about to die, and yet he jumps and he has a conversation with the old man, right? The father that has adopted him. And I believe, I'm going to butcher this, but I'm going to paraphrase. And he said something like, there's much you can do within just a few seconds. And there's an epiphany that happens with 5. And he understands, I don't have to jump back, years. I can do a lot within a few seconds. And that one bit of advice that he got from that jump, the wisdom from his elder, he takes and applies to help him save the day and save his family.
Yeah.
That's a huge moment. There's a lot of that could be applied to the photo jumper now that I think of that. If I would ask everyone now, look at your phone. What kind of photos you got? What photos would you go back to? Who would you interact with? How would you interact with them? I do want to say, years ago, it's one of those ideas that I had and never acted on because I didn't have the technical know-how. I just had the concept. You talked about how you've talked to people who can take AI, personalities, data inputs, and create kind of a person from the past that someone can interact with in the future. Maybe they're deceased or what have you. I had a concept where if you went to a graveyard, here's the future state of graveyards. You'd almost have a slideshow of who that person was. Today, you go look at a headstone, you have a name, you have the year they were born, and the year they died. You might have something they said, right? If you spend a little more money, or if they were someone of influence, they had a quote, told them I was sick, something like that. In the future state, you would have a video screen that actually showed who you'd have Tony Bible. Let's just take me. I'm dead in the future, right? Here he was as a young man. He had hair. He worked out. He played the trumpet. Yay. He went off to college. He got a degree. He became employed at a big national bank as a project manager. He lost all his hair immediately with stress. He grew a beard because it's the only hair he could grow. And then he had kids. And wow, now, he loved his dog and he loved his football team. He loved the Georgia Bulldogs and married a wife and had kids and role played way too much and wrote nerdy, dorky, geeked out stuff online and had great interviews with Edwin Rydberg. That was the entirety of his life. He sat in a rocking chair until he passed gently in that good night, I hope. That's the kind of video you would get on any headstone. It'd be kind of cool to walk up. Imagine yourself in a graveyard, all these headstones with TV monitors. You go up and push a button. It could be a complete, total stranger. And you get a sense of who that person was in their life. Just like movies are now, way more impactful than just a tombstone with a name and the years they lived in past.
Yeah, it'd be interesting. It'd be nice to see something like that. Sadly, they seem to be cremating everyone now. So
it is cheaper. That's probably how I want to go, right? I don't want to come back in The Walking Dead if that ever happens.
Yeah, I suppose there's that.
Yeah. I'm not good looking now. Can you imagine how bad I'd look then? Your face is kind of falling off. You're missing a jaw.
Yeah. Well, on that interesting note, it's been great chatting with you. We are unfortunately out of time today, but before you go, maybe you can just tell us what's next for the series, the Photo Jumper series, and what else you have coming out. Again, you can remind us because you already did tell us a little bit earlier, and then sort of where we might find you online and if you're at any upcoming events or anything.
Yeah, sure. When I've thoroughly enjoyed this, for me, this is almost better than writing. It's the engagement with other people who are like-minded and finding other people who like to geek out about science fiction and fantasy. So thanks for having me. Hope you have me again. Let's do some plugs. You can find me at tonybible.com. There's free stuff out there. You can read the first chapters of my books, The Photo Jumper and Remember Me, A Love Against Time. I put some bookmarks out there. If you print them off, I advise using the hard cardstock so they last long. I mentioned I'm a role-playing gamer nerd. I've provided a free RPG out there for those like myself who like to game with the photo jumping lore. Now, here's what's interesting about that. You can roll dice. Everyone's done that. I went and I used AI and I said, hey, what are some alternative ways to resolve conflict and move along with the story? They gave me some really good ideas, like using songs. And so it's got loose rule mechanics. So if you're a role player, go out there, download. I have not play tested it, and gleefully so. Let me know how that works. You can subscribe and get a free story, by the way, if you want to. Everyone does that. Don't follow me. That's creepy. I'm not sure you can. I'm on Facebook and TikTok and a couple other social medias, but guess what? I'm not really as social as I am. I'm writing. I am not on those platforms very much, but I got 2 books out. I've mentioned them already. I got more coming. We got 100 microfictions with macro meaning that'll be released by September. I have 10 short stories. They are good ones. They're going to be fantastically weird. They will be released by December, just in time for the holidays. Makes a great gift. And then in the first quarter of 2026, I plan on launching the Photo Jumper, The Waymakers. That's the working title. You have no idea what's coming, and be glad for it. And I cannot wait to have this sequel launched, because I don't have to. Here's what you can expect. Mila, you get more of her backstory. Oh my God, hang on to your butts. Our bad guy, Matt, yeah, some things just don't go away. We have national implications. I'm not going to give away what happens because that's a huge reveal, and I want the impact to be meaningful when you read it. And then we have a character that, if I do it right, will absolutely be unforgettable. There's similar characters that are out there now, but no one exactly like her, because I've researched the hell out of her. I've even put in a chat GPT AI and say, hey, is there anyone like? No. The answer is no. And that thing is way smarter than I am and has way more perspective than I do. But there's exciting things coming for this character. And by the way, I hope I'm not a one-trick pony. I got 2 other novels or concepts in mind. They may be epics. One's called Dark Times. Really simple concept. What happens if the sun doesn't rise? And what happens when it's in a fantasy setting with all kinds of spooky characters like werewolves and vampires, which are overused? I'm going to use a lot more, but what happens to religion? What happens to faith? What happens to the politics in that setting? Think Witcher type setting, and the sun never rise. Dark Times, that's coming. I have a modern setting too. It's called The Pause. What happens when everyone on Earth suddenly freezes, stops whatever they're doing, but all the machinery and processes in nature continues, except for you? You're the one person who can move. Then what happens? Why me? Why is everyone else frozen in time? And then they snap out of it, but after much catastrophe. Planes have come out of the air, yachts have, sunken or come on land. There are pileups all over the freeways, mass hysteria, media circus, tons of deaths, people trying to figure out, what do we do? Is it going to happen again? Why did this happen? And one person or a few people know more. That's coming. The Pause. That's who I am, Edwin. Edwin, I've enjoyed this. I'd like to do this again. Let's stay in contact. Thank you for reading my book. I want more people to read my book. You don't need to buy it. Go get it used if you can. Go get it for free. But the Photo Jumper, I think that's what I'm going to be known for. And at the end of the day, I just want to write a good story, man.
That sounds great. We have a lot to look forward to from you then. Tony Bible, thank you so much for joining me today.
Always a pleasure and an honor. Thank you, Edwin.
And thank you for listening. Information and links related to this and all episodes are available at alternatefutures.co.uk. I'm also over at Substack under Alternate Futures, where I post articles on science fiction, socio-technological issues, and futurism. You can subscribe for free or sign up for a paid account if you'd like to support the podcast. If you've enjoyed this episode, why not share it with friends, writers, and other sci-fi fans you know? And if there are any indie sci-fi creators you'd like to see featured, send me a message at podcast@alternatefutures.co.uk. Once again, I'd like to thank you for listening, and I hope you'll join me on the next episode.
This is the future. Human error. Evolution. This is the future.